New York Times reported hundreds of special forces troops and dozens of U.S. warplanes and helicopters were deployed to locate the downed F-15 crew member in Iran. Oh, wait. They were closer by far to the Natanz nuclear facility than they were to where the pilot crashed. And they want you to believe that the pilot walked 110 miles in one day, less than one day. Come on. What a coincidence. Before this madness, the Washington Post reported that Trump and the U.S. military were considering to build an airport inside Iran, seize the enriched uranium, and take it out with the transport aircraft. This is exactly what happened, and they used the pilot's rescuing claim to cover it. Yesterday, I made a conscious decision not to live stream, because the official story that was presented about the downed C-130 military transport aircraft, as well as Blackhawks, as well as a Little Bird helicopter, it didn't make any sense to me. Now, the official story is that the United States, they did some sort of a rescue mission for the missing F-15E fighter jet pilot. Actually, it was like one of the crew members. It was the crew member. The additional crew member, I believe it was the backseat person on the plane. This was supposed to be some sort of a rescue mission. Now, there's a lot of holes in the official story. Hegseth and Trump just gave a press briefing and detailed a lot of the events. And apparently Hegseth and Dan Kane are going to be giving another press briefing about what took place tomorrow morning. So it's kind of odd, right? You have Hegseth, Dan Kane, and Trump giving a press briefing, and the CIA director Ratcliffe was there as well speaking. And then tomorrow they have like another press briefing about the same exact thing with two of the same people. It's almost as if what they're telling you happened did not happen, so they're going to shove it down your throats. They're going to shove the official narrative down your throats. Now, am I necessarily saying that there is no such thing as any sort of missing F-15E pilot? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. Not necessarily saying that. I wouldn't put it past them. There was a downed plane, right? But it wouldn't be the first time that the U.S. made up a story about like a missing soldier. As some of you may know, the Washington Post loyally repeated the government's exciting tale about a U.S. airman, a U.S. soldier in 2003 who had to be rescued in Iraq. And it turned out like pretty much the whole story was fabricated. Okay, so yes, the U.S. government does lie, even about crazy things like this. The U.S. soldier in 2003 even had a name, Jessica Lynch. So they have done this sort of stuff before, right? But I actually don't think that this was, maybe there was missing soldier, I don't know. But that's really not the whole point here. I mean, there very well could have been, and likely there were missing pilots. But even if there were, that was in all likelihood used as cover, as deception to do something else. What was that something else? Well, we are going to discuss it, okay? Now, according to the official story, of course, they lost, initially they said it was like, just a few aircraft. Then it went all the way up to 12. I think we're at now like 14 aircraft were lost while trying to save this pilot. However, there's a lot of holes in the story. In total, obviously, you had the F-15E, which went down. But in the search and rescue operations, they admitted to losing an A-10 Warthog, 4 MH-6 Little Birds. So that's 5. And then you have 7 in total now. There's 2 UH-60 Blackhawks, 9, 2 C-130 Hercules, and additional 4 MQ-9 Reapers. So in total, 13 aircraft were lost. And this is only what the U.S. is officially admitting to. Now, Patricia Marins wrote on her Twitter page saying that, just this stuff alone would have costed hundreds of millions of dollars, damage between $260 to $330 million in total. Absolutely insane, of course, yes. But the question is, why we really think they're going to risk like hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of other troops for one missing crew member of an F-15E? You really think that? I don't think that. I think if you think that, I think if you look at all the facts I'm about to present to you and you still believe the official story, I'm sorry, but you're stupid. I don't care if you were like fell for the initial story, because I did too. Like the moment it came out, I'm like, oh, well, they're, I don't know where this is in relation to where the pilot went down. And okay, I think this is all adding up, right? But then you begin to pick it all apart and you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And yeah, well, the first thing that really stood out to me was this right here. The fact that there was 2 C-130s downed in this operation. 2 C-130s, which are completely destroyed. Now, why does that not make sense to me? Because why the hell do you need a military transport aircraft, 2 of them, this big, for one freaking pilot? Why? Why do you need 2? Now, again, I'm not a military expert. I don't know how these operations work. Maybe there's some reason why they needed that, right? But really, that was the first question I had. And that's why I didn't stream last night, in part, because it didn't make sense to me that this was just a rescue operation if they took 2 of these giant military transport aircrafts. 0 sense whatsoever. There you go. Whoops, let's go back here. You can see the footage of the destruction of these aircraft. I mean, it's just a crazy level of destruction. Mass grave of American aircraft that were lost last night while trying to rescue the pilot. New York Times reported hundreds of special forces troops and dozens of U.S. warplanes and helicopters were deployed to locate the downed F-15 crew member in Iran. Hundreds of U.S. special forces troops? Why? I mean, it just seems logical to me that the official story about the massive airstrikes on any sort of Iranians that were trying to get close to the location of these jets, of these aircraft, of these helicopters that landed, that made sense. Like, oh, we shot them from the sky. Why would they send hundreds of special forces on the ground, special operations forces on the ground, who would then also, very likely, very possibly be KIA, killed in action, just to get one guy? That doesn't make sense. It does make sense, which was the initial story, that like they sent a A-10 Warthog, but that one also was for drones. They sent some helicopters, okay, and they did this sort of stuff to try and bomb any Iranians, that were trying to search for the pilot, trying to get close to where the C-130s went down. And we actually have proof of that, right? What we don't have any sort of indication of is why they needed to send, again, quote, hundreds of special forces. We do have proof that on the roads into the location where the C-130 went down in Isfahan, that the U.S. did do extensive bombings on the roads to make sure that no Iranians could easily access the crash site. Now, the IRGC, Khatam al-Anbiya military spokesman, he had some thoughts on this, right? The Iranians had some thoughts on this. They said, after Iran's fighters completed the encirclement, the contemptible enemy, in order to prevent the disgrace of Trump and preserve the hollow prestige of their army, was forced to heavily bomb their own downed aircraft, meaning the Iranians downed it. Commanders and soldiers, a spokesperson for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters said, the country's integrated air defense command. According to the statement, multiple U.S. aircraft were struck and forced into emergency landings south of Isfahan. 2 C-130 military transport, as well as 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Trump, by the way, did come out today, and he said that looking at the helicopters, we have, he wasn't even referring to these helicopters. He was referring to the ones that got back home in the first rescue operation. He said that, they're just littered with bullet holes. That was done by, Iranian nomads living in the mountains, with bolt-action rifles. Now, what do we think the Iranian air defense did? You think the Iranian air defense couldn't hit a C-130, 2 C-130s? Now, this is where things got really interesting. Iran confirmed 2 C-130 transports and 2 Black Hawk choppers destroyed and thwarted U.S. operation. The so-called rescue operation was planned as deception and escape operation under the pretext of rescuing pilot. So what was the real operation then? Well, we could look at a map and make some judgments based on the map. This was the other big problem I had yesterday. The location where the C-130s and the Black Hawks went down was 110 miles away from where the F-15E went down. 185 kilometers away from where the F-15E went down. Why the hell Why the hell were a C-130 and two Black Hawk helicopters 185 kilometers away? And again, the official story is that they landed there. Why? I don't know. They say that somehow, miraculously, the pilot managed to travel 110 miles in less than 24 hours in a country where everyone was searching for him. Do you honestly believe that? Please, do you honestly believe that? Come on, what are we doing? Oh, he traveled 110 miles as literally all the nomadic villagers, every single, besieged member of the IRGC, everyone was looking for this person, but somehow he traveled, not just evaded capture, somehow traveled 110 miles. No, I don't believe that. But for some reason, we had a C-130, two C-130s, and two Black Hawk helicopters. The U.S. claims landed on their own merits. Now, where did they land? They landed in Isfahan, not too far away from the Natanz nuclear facility. Wait, they were closer by far to the Natanz nuclear facility than they were to where the pilot crashed. And they want you to believe that the pilot walked 110 miles in one day, less than one day. Come on. What a coincidence. What a coincidence. They did not send in hundreds of special operations forces, two C-130s, all these helicopters. They did not do this even in the correct location to have, ostensibly found this F-15E crew member. They did this for something that was, in all likelihood, much more sinister. And hey, does anyone remember, a day as this was all taking place, and the day before this happened, it was the day that the F-15E got shot down, I believe, and the day after, Pete Hegseth, he fired all these generals in the U.S. Army. He fired the Secretary of the U.S. Army. He fired two of top commanders, something like that. He fired all these people in the U.S. Army, all the senior military brass, except for Dan Kane. And why do you think he fired them? As we discussed, this had to have been some major disagreement with the senior brass of the U.S. Army, who did not like something that Pete Hegseth was planning with the U.S. Army. And then we now have pretty much confirmation that the U.S. was planning to do and tried to carry out some major special operations task in the Isfahan area, in the Natanz area of Isfahan, near the nuclear facility where they kept, supposedly, the enriched uranium. Folks, put two and two together. You have enough ammo to understand that the official story, yet again, is utter BS. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or GiveSendGo. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.